My name is Melvin, and I'm 21 years old. I left the town of Millfield a long time ago, and I have no plans to ever go back. There are things that happened there that I just can't forget, no matter how much time passes. When I was 7, my dad and I lived in a small house in a very remote part of Millfield. Isolation was just a way of life there. To get to our house, you had to take a long, winding dirt trail through dense trees. It was so narrow that the school bus couldn't get back there. Because of that, I had to walk over 2 miles down that trail every single day to get to school. Everything started to change on a chilly morning in late September. That morning was like any other. I put on my backpack and left early to catch the bus. The mist was still hanging low, the trees were damp, and the air had a bite to it. I walked along the familiar path, still half asleep and groggy. When I hit a sharp bend in the trail, I froze. There was an old, beat-up silver Toyota parked right in the middle of the path. I stood there for a few seconds, totally confused. This road was narrow and rugged. Nobody ever drove back here. I had never seen a car in this spot before. I crept a little closer to take a look. Inside the car, a woman was sitting perfectly still in the driver's seat. What creeped me out was that she didn't react at all. She just sat there, staring blankly at me. I felt a pit in my stomach, so I quickly stepped into the grass to walk around the car. As I tried to pass, she slowly turned her head to follow me. Her gaze stayed locked on my back, cold and sharp, until I finally broke into a run and reached the edge of town. When I got home that afternoon, I told my dad about it. His face went pale. He looked at me and said firmly, "Melvin, nobody just gets lost on that road." Starting the very next day, Dad began driving me to school and picking me up. The woman didn't show up again. Eventually, I started to think it was just a weird, one-time thing. After a week of seeing no sign of her, I told my dad I could handle walking to school on my own again. But that very afternoon, the car was back. This time, I didn't stop to look. I veered off and tried to circle around the trail through the edge of the woods. Suddenly, I heard the car door fly open and the sound of footsteps sprinting toward me. I immediately bolted. "Melvin!" The scream was high-pitched and tore through the quiet air. I went numb. How did she know my name? Pure terror turned into survival instinct. I ran through the trees like a hunted animal. Since I knew every inch of those woods, I managed to lose her by a dry creek bed and sprinted all the way home. I slammed the door behind me, gasping for air. My dad rushed out when he heard the noise. He looked terrified when he saw the state I was in. It took me a while to get the words out, but I finally told him everything, especially the part where she called out my name. My dad went into a state of shock. He looked like he aged 10 years in a matter of hours. Finally, he decided to tell me the truth he had been hiding for 7 years. He told me the woman I saw was most likely my mother, Marissa. I sat there, stunned. In my entire life, I had never heard my dad mention my mother. I had no idea who she was, no photos, no stories, nothing. That explained that she suffered from severe schizophrenia. She loved me in a way that was terrifying and distorted. In her episodes, she believed this world was too dark for me. She thought the only way to protect me was to take me with her to the afterlife. She had tried to take me away one stormy night years ago, and it almost ended in tragedy before my dad stopped her. When she was committed to a mental hospital back then, she screamed a vow. "I'll come back for him." After hearing the story, I just sat there in silence. My mind was a mess. I kept picturing that woman, a mother who was both heartbreaking and horrifying, someone I never truly knew. From that night on, our house became a fortress. My dad kept a gun by the door, and the police patrolled the area more often. But she was smart. She never showed her face when an adult was around. One night, during a light rain, I woke up to a steady tapping on my second-story window. I trembling as I pulled back the curtain. The woman was standing right there on the narrow ledge outside my bedroom window. The rain had matted her hair down, making her thin face look like a skull. For the first time, I was face to face with my mother, with only a pane of glass between us. She didn't try to break in. She just pressed her thin hand against the glass, stroking the spot where my face was. Her eyes were cloudy, but they were filled with a twisted kind of love. Her lips moved, whispering my name over and over, gesturing for me to come into her arms. I screamed for my dad. By the time he burst into the room with his gun, she had jumped down from the ledge and vanished into the pitch-black night as if she had never been there at all. My mother was caught a few days later. The police issued a permanent restraining order and moved her to a high-security treatment facility for good. My family left Millfield that very night, running away from the woman who gave birth to me. Now that I'm 21, I sometimes catch myself looking in the mirror and wondering how much of her madness is in my blood. Lately, I've been thinking about going to see her, but I don't know if I'm brave enough to face the person who is both my mother and my life's greatest nightmare. Before we continue, I just want to say thank you. MHS crossed over 10,000 subscribers in 2025, and that's all because of you. Every single view, like, and share means the world to me. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. This year, we're setting our sights on 50,000 in 2026. So if you enjoy these videos and haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. Hit that button, join the community, let's grow this together. Now, back to the stories.
My husband and I moved into a house in the suburbs of New Jersey last December. We had been searching for a quiet place to settle down after years of renting in the city. This house was perfect. 3 bedrooms, a spacious backyard, and an affordable price. My husband, a corporate employee, negotiated skillfully to get this rate. But that perfection was shattered when a foul odor appeared inside the house after the first week. At first, it was just a faint metallic smell. I thought it might be old plumbing or unshoveled garbage. But after a few days, the smell became so strong that I had to open every window in the house. I checked the sewage system, the trash cans, and the kitchen cabinets, but couldn't find the source. My husband was busy with work, rarely home, so he didn't truly grasp the severity of the problem. Since I didn't know anyone in the neighborhood yet, I decided to look for help online. I posted on a local community forum. I described the odor, and in my haste, I naively revealed my exact address. The reaction was faster than I expected. Within an hour, there were over 20 comments, but no one offered useful advice. Instead, they told the history of the house. 3 years ago, a brutal murder had occurred here. A man had murdered his wife and young son and buried the bodies in the backyard. The crime was discovered months later when neighbors reported a strange smell. Many on the forum suspected that there might still be remains left in the ground, or that the odor was a sign of something worse. I closed my laptop, my hands trembling. Did my husband know about this? I decided not to tell him immediately and to find out more first. A few days later, I discovered a strange man living in the shed in the backyard. He introduced himself as Terry, a homeless man who had squatted there since before we moved in. He said he wasn't harming anyone. He just needed shelter for the winter. I looked at him in his dirty clothes and heavy body odor and thought this was the source of the stench. I told my husband about Terry. At first, he was angry, saying he would go out and chase the man away himself. But then, perhaps seeing my anxiety, he decided to call the police. They came and took Terry away gently. The officer told me that homeless people often shelter in abandoned or sparsely occupied houses, and we should lock the shed door more securely. As expected, the heavy body odor vanished, but after a few days, a faint, almost rotten, fishy smell still lingered in the hidden corners. It wasn't horrific, but enough to keep me awake. The odor problem wasn't truly solved. Eventually, I told my husband about the 3-year-old murder case that happened in the house. After some discussion, and wanting complete peace of mind from the shadow of the past, we decided to hire a priest to perform an exorcism. The priest walked around the house, sprinkled holy water, and read prayers. After that, the odor seemed to be completely swept away. I thought it was over, and I could start enjoying the new house. Afterward, I also got to know a woman named Maya, who lived nearby. She was a few years younger than me, friendly, and often came to visit. We had coffee together and chatted about life in the new neighborhood. Maya made me feel less lonely on the days my husband was at work. A peaceful week passed. Then the stench returned. This time it was much stronger and fiercer, as if something was decomposing right inside the house. In addition, the power in the house began to cut out for unknown reasons. Electricians came to check, but they found nothing wrong with the system. The smell caused me constant nausea. I started feeling dizzy. One afternoon when my husband was at work, the power suddenly went out completely. I went to his office to check the circuit breaker. As soon as I walked in, an unusually cold draft and the strongest, most pungent odor hit me. It led me to a large cabinet placed against the wall. I'd never noticed that cabinet before. It looked like a regular file cabinet, but when I touched it, I realized it was a deep freezer. Why would my husband need this in his office? I observed it for a moment longer and then decided to open it. Inside, I saw a small object wrapped in a clear plastic bag. I stared at it for a few seconds before my brain processed the image. It was a baby, pale skin, eyes closed. I backed away, slamming the freezer lid shut. I ran out of the room, into the bathroom, and vomited everything in my stomach. My mind was spinning with hundreds of questions. Who was that child? Why was it there? And most importantly, did my husband know about it? I sat on the bathroom floor, taking almost 10 minutes just to try and control my breathing and the nausea. My reason told me to run immediately and call the police. But a crazy part of me wanted to know all the horrible truth. Finally, I returned to the office, my hands still shaking. I opened my husband's computer, searching for anything that could explain the situation. I found a text file. Inside was a list, names of several women with dates, and brief notes. I read each line. There were 5 names, and the last one, the most recent, clearly read, Maya, August 2nd, pregnant. Pregnant? Maya was pregnant? I remembered her visits, how she asked about my husband, about his work schedule. I thought she was just being curious, but now I understood she was tracking him. Or maybe she was trying to pressure him through me. I reread the list. 5 names, 5 women. If the baby in the freezer belonged to one of them, what happened to the others? All the pieces started fitting together. The initial stench might have been from a body before he bought the freezer. When the smell returned, it was because the power outages caused the freezer to malfunction, and the infant's body began to decompose. Everything started to make horrifying sense. He chose this house not because it was cheap, but because of its dark history. If anyone found something suspicious, people would blame the curse or the lingering remains from the old case. He had calculated everything from the start. I sat there looking at the computer screen with the list of names. I knew that if I confronted him, I would be in danger. My reason told me to act as if nothing had happened. I closed the computer, wiped away any traces. I wiped down the freezer, ensuring it looked untouched. I needed to get out of here before my husband came home. I took my phone and texted him in a casual tone. I feel better now. Going out to run some errands. He replied immediately with a smiling emoji. I drove out of the neighborhood. I drove far, to a rest stop on the highway, a place with many people and security cameras. I parked the car, walked into the public restroom, and called the state police. Not the local police. I didn't know if my husband knew anyone in that department. I spoke slowly, clearly, providing all the necessary information, and most importantly, there is an infant's body inside that freezer, and my husband is on his way home. The operator asked me to stay in a safe place and not return home. They would send police immediately. I sat in the car and waited. 30 minutes later, my phone rang. A police officer called, confirming they had arrived at the house and arrested my husband. He was trying to move the freezer when they stormed in. They had found the infant's body and were checking the entire house. The officer asked if I could come to the police station to give my statement. I agreed, still shaking. In the following days, I learned more horrific details. The police dug up the backyard and found 2 more infant bodies. They identified some of the women on the list. They were all acquaintances of my husband and had either gone missing or gone silent after becoming pregnant. Maya was also arrested on suspicion of complicity, although she insisted she knew nothing about the bodies. I had lived in that house, right on a mass grave. I had befriended Maya, whom I believed was just a friendly neighbor, but she was either on the list of victims or an accomplice. The level of depravity and calculation of the man I called my husband exceeded any disgusting crime I had ever known. I filed for divorce immediately while he was awaiting trial. I changed my name, sold everything related to that disgusting house, and moved to another state to start a new life. Fortunately, I got out in time, but the psychological wounds are permanent.
I'm Joseph. I'm 31 years old. I got treated for depression in Boston, then came back to my hometown, Lakeland, Florida. My mom died when I was a kid. My dad was my only family, and he spent his whole life farming and had a decent-sized farm back in his hometown. The day I got back, I didn't tell my dad ahead of time to surprise him. As soon as he saw me, he looked shocked and worried. "Joseph, what are you doing here?" "Surprise. I'm done with my treatment, and from now on, I'm gonna live here with you." I put my arm around my dad's shoulder and said, "What? Move back here to live?" My dad blurted out, kinda shocked. I just stared at him for a sec, then he smiled, gave me a pat on the shoulder, but he still looked worried. "You're really gonna trade being a software engineer for this tough farming job?" "I'm good," I told my dad to chill. Right then, some guy walked up to my dad, called him boss, and said the watering was all done. Seeing the confused look on my face, my dad goes, "This is Robert. He runs the planning area." "But this is Owen's..." I didn't even get a chance to finish asking. "Owen took off 3 months ago," my dad said, and went right back to work. After walking around, I noticed all the old workers were gone. Maybe they quit as Owen did. I saw on the farm's website that my dad was always hiring, but only people without families, since the work's tough and takes up a lot of time. "But there's enough workers now. Probably more than before," I mumbled. "I'm so stoked to see you back. Relax for a bit. Don't stress about the farm." Dad came in and slapped me on the shoulder, totally catching me off guard. "I'm good, no worries. But why'd all the workers at the old farm quit?" I asked. "That's on them. Don't stress," Dad said as he walked out. The first few days back home, I felt chill with the fresh, cool air. I heard Dad say the farm's eggs sell for a good price because they're high quality, and now they're focusing on cranking up the amount. "Joseph, what's your plan?" Robert yelled, totally scaring me. "Morning, Robert. I'm gonna check out the chicken feed warehouse." "That's a spot nobody's supposed to go, didn't you know?" I was totally thrown off by what Robert said. We'll handle everything else on the farm except this spot. The boss will take care of the chicken food himself. Thanks. Keep doing your thing. I headed over to the orange grove. I only saw my dad at dinner all day. After asking about stuff on the farm a bunch of times and seeing how uncomfortable he was, I stopped asking. One evening, I woke up to a noise, thinking it was a thief, so I jumped up fast and ran to the window to check it out. A dark shadow zipped by, heading toward the farm behind the house. I ran straight to my dad's room. "Dad, looks like someone broke in," I whispered, serious as hell. But my dad wasn't in the room. Where'd he go? Or was that dark shadow actually him? I quietly made my way to the back of the house. The whispering was coming from far off, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. It was Dad and Robert talking in front of the chicken feed area. I was gonna move closer to listen, but those two had already gone inside. Robert straight up said this area was off limits. So what's going on? I stood outside really torn about whether or not to sneak in. I didn't hear anything else coming from inside. After about 10 minutes, the grinding machine kicked on. The sound was low. Maybe Dad had soundproofed it or turned it down. Why grinding chicken feed at this time? I had so many questions and doubts. It was making me feel all restless and uneasy. I slowly pushed the door open to peek in, and after a few seconds, my eyes went wide. My stomach flipped, my throat went dry, and I felt like I was gonna puke. Dad's eyes suddenly shot over to the door where I was standing. I quickly turned around and ran straight to my room, locking the door behind me. The next morning, I booked a flight back to Massachusetts and just shot my dad a text that I was in Boston, but I was actually in New Bedford. I'm back in the psych ward again. Every night, I dream about the blade slicing into human skin, the sound of it tearing and crushing, mixed with that cold, mechanical noise. The bright red liquid sprayed out, splashing all over the machine and leaving these long, gross streaks. The crushed bits of flesh, skin, and bones got all messed up into small pieces, slowly sliding down the conveyor belt. The awful scene in front of me and the fear just hit me to my core. Owen and the old workers didn't quit. They got eaten by the chickens. It wasn't just them. It was a bunch of others too. What do I do now? Snitch on my own dad?
Back when I was 9, like 20 years ago, I spent Christmas with my uncle's family out on his farm in Terlingwood, Texas. I moved in with my grandma after my parents split up. Even though I didn't have a whole family, I still had plenty of love from other relatives like my uncle. My uncle's second son was 2 years younger than me, and we were pretty close. I was pretty much jumping for joy when my grandma said I could stay there for Christmas. After we finished the awesome turkey dinner my aunt made, my cousin and I hung up 2 stockings with our wishes and names stitched on them, right on the Christmas tree. "Can I stay up till Santa shows up to say thanks, Mom?" my cousin asked my aunt-in-law. "No, sweetie. A good kid who gets presents doesn't stay up late, right?" My aunt-in-law was always sweet about it. "What about you, Finn? What'd you write to Santa?" my aunt-in-law suddenly asked, kind of startling me. "It's a secret," I whispered. My aunt-in-law just smiled and led me and my brother back to our room. Honestly, I just stuffed a blank piece of paper in my sock. I wasn't young enough anymore to fall for those stories adults tell. But back then, I was really trying hard to believe Santa was real. That night, I couldn't sleep. Maybe I had too much hot chocolate, or maybe it was my cousin. Her snoring was absolutely awful. After lying there a while, I went to the bathroom, hoping I'd feel comfortable enough to sleep. When I got back from the bathroom and headed to the living room,
I saw a dark shadow pass by the window, and I just froze for a few seconds. Is Santa really coming? What time is it? I was curious, so I went to open the window and stuck my head out. The cold wind hit me like a slap, waking me right up. I looked around the big yard to the left of the house, and there was nothing weird, just the sound of some families still partying. I couldn't take the cold anymore, so I shut the window, shivering and covered in goosebumps. Just as I was about to head back to my room, a loud noise startled me. Beavis? I figured my cousin was awake, but there was no answer. As I got closer to the bedroom, it was all quiet, and Beavis's snoring was still going strong. I quietly tiptoed the last few steps to the bedroom. The noise happened again, then a bunch more, so I stopped and looked at the window again. Santa Claus? I shouted when I saw red and white shadows zip by. I rushed over to the window to check if what I was thinking was real, and then I saw something that would haunt me for life. It was totally Santa Claus, wearing that classic bright red coat, but his white beard was splattered with red, and each drop was slowly dripping down. In his hand was a big shiny knife, and red drops were dripping from the blade, making stains on the white snow. There was another man, his face all messed up, covered in red, and he looked absolutely terrified. The man was kneeling in front of Santa, shaking with fear and pain. The man's hands were gripping his stomach so tight that they were covered in red, and every breath was coming out all labored and wheezy. Then he tried to get away, looking for a way out, but his movements slowly faded and eventually just stopped. Santa Claus, no, the killer, looked down at the man who was dying, and a creepy smile crept across his face. He reached out and brushed his cheek like it was some kind of final sick joke. Then he finished him off with a deadly stab. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought I was gonna explode. My stomach was doing flips, and I was feeling super nauseous, but I just couldn't look away from what was happening. That Santa totally saw me when he walked away. I wanted to scream and run to find my uncle and aunt, but my legs felt frozen, like I couldn't move at all. Santa looked at me and slowly lifted his bloody finger to his lips, like telling me to be quiet. I was frozen in place for a sec. My whole body felt numb, not from the cold, but from the fear that just took over me. Santa just took off, and I was standing there, not even sure how long it took before I just crumpled to the floor. I crawled back to my room, pulled the blanket over me, and I was still shaking like crazy. I couldn't get a wink of sleep that night. The next day, when the whole fam got together to open up the gifts Santa supposedly brought, everyone was all hyped, especially my cousin. Me? I still couldn't shake off the nightmare from last night. Plain, sweet, Beavis yelled, all pumped when he got his gift. Come on, Finn, open your present, my aunt-in-law said with a smile. I knew this was the gift my uncle and aunt-in-law got for me, not Santa. Santa was busy with other stuff last night, I mumbled. Huh? What'd you say? My aunt asked, but I dodged it real quick. Go check if Santa's got anything else to say to you guys, my uncle said to me and Beavis. Did Santa leave a message? Beavis said, all surprised, and then started digging around in the stocking. No way, he shouted when he spotted a red note. May my handsome boy Beavis be a healthy kid. Handsome boy, that's the nickname only you use for me. This is Santa's message just for you. My uncle shot Beavis a glare, looking all annoyed, then turned to me and said, You gotta keep this to yourself. After lunch, I headed back to my room and pulled out the note from my pocket. Keep it a secret. The letters were super bold, like a serious reminder. I crumpled up the note, squeezed it in my hand, and just started crying. The next day, I asked if I could go back to my grandma's, and that was the last time I saw my uncle and aunt-in-law. I totally dodged their questions. I just couldn't face them. I've never forgotten that. Like the fear and all made me totally hate Christmas and just want to hide away. This Christmas, I met Alita. She's the last missing piece that made my life feel complete. Alita said she hated Christmas too. Santa Claus killed my dad. I saw it all happen, but I couldn't do a thing. So, Alita and I just stuck together through that crazy night. But I know who did it, and Alita doesn't. I posted this story on Reddit because I wanted to share it and get some advice. I'm totally freaking out and scared. One afternoon, after cleaning up every corner of my room, I randomly found a diary with my name on it. I'm not going to tell you my real name. Just call me Mia. I was so stoked, like I just found a bunch of cash. So I could figure out what went down before I turned 12, because I don't remember a thing. I'm writing this down because if I lose my memory, this'll be proof to throw my mom under the bus in court. What was that? I read that line again, and it was stuck in the last line of the first page, in red ink instead of blue. Then, I flipped the diary over and checked out the owner's name again. It was me, my name. To figure out the answers to the questions in my head, I started reading the diary closely. May 13th, 2007. I was 7 back then. I am super sad. It was the first time I saw my parents fighting. I don't get why, but I saw my dad crying after my mom left. June 22nd, 2007. Today, while I was playing store with my best friend, I needed some paper, so I dashed into my parents' room to grab some. I saw on my mom's computer screen, death benefit. I don't really get it. It's like death, but why do I get benefits? After reading all this, my mind was all over the place. July 18th, 2007. Dad hasn't been home for 2 days, and I miss him so much that I called him up. Dad promised to get me a princess doll when he gets back, and I can't wait. After dinner tonight, I heard Mom talking, and I was sure it was Dad, so I happily ran over. But nope, he was super creepy. Mom said he was Dad's friend. August 30th, 2007. Dad's home. This morning, Mom made breakfast for the whole family, and she and Dad were laughing together. I saw Mom make 3 plates of food. Then she added spices to one, but not the other 2. Dad probably likes his food spicy. September 2nd, 2007. Dad passed away. I miss him so much. I cried when I read this. I didn't have any memories of Dad, but now it's different. I looked up at the bookshelf, grabbed all the dolls off it, and hugged them tight to my chest. There's gotta be at least one of them that Dad gave me, or maybe all of them. September 25th, 2007. Since Dad passed away, that man Mom said was Dad's friend has been coming around a lot more, and I really don't like him. Today, I even heard Mom and him talking about taking me to the doctor. I'm in good shape, right? That was the last day I wrote in this diary. I guess I got taken to the doctor, and all my memories from before I turned 12 were taken away by him. I grew up knowing barely anything about my dad passing away. I lived with my mom and stepdad. I don't know if it was really my mom anymore, or if it was the devil inside her. Writing this on Reddit, I cried a ton, not knowing how to deal with everything. Looks like the next one in Mom and stepfather's plan is Grandma, and then it's me. I guess I got some serious insurance. I wonder if that's enough to make Mom happy. She took care of me for a long time. I gotta get Grandma away from these evil people. Even though I thought about calling the police, like calling the police on my own mom. I just can't do it. Updating the comments, I saw someone gave me an advice. You should totally take Grandma away tonight, Bethany. Head to the police station and report what happened. I was super scared, so I was at Grandma's house, locking all the doors. I thought I got caught. That person knew my real name, and I never told anyone. It seemed like Mom. My mom sent a bunch of missed calls and messages for 3 hours asking where I was. I didn't dare to answer or pick up the phone. I was scared, so I hugged my grandma tight and cried a lot. She was old and weak, just could only get around in a wheelchair. Maybe my mom lured me and my grandma out at night to easily take us out. My brother has returned after 4 years of being missing, and I'm about to get into big trouble. 4 years ago, my brother went missing right after graduating from university. A handsome university student with excellent academic performance, a clean personal life, and a beautiful girlfriend who has been with him for 5 years. That's my brother in the eyes of everyone. But in my eyes, he is sick, ugly, and insane. He always thinks he's right and forces all of his thoughts on me. That perfect appearance deceives everyone, even our parents. If he's upset, I will definitely get beaten, even if it has nothing to do with me. He may look clean and elegant, but he can go on a whole week without showering, instead bathing in cologne. If he likes my food, he'll just eat it without even asking for permission. If he remembers, he'll leave a few small pieces. Otherwise, he'll eat everything up. The day he went missing, I actually felt happy, though I knew that wasn't right. But my life became much more peaceful, a lot more peaceful. My mother was in agony and utter desperation. My mother devoted all her time, energy, and the family's money to search for him by any means necessary. His belongings in the shared room were not allowed to be changed, even in the slightest detail. Over time, the police, the FBI, and both my father and I gradually lost hope, but my mother did not. My mother always believed that one day her beloved son would return. When investigating my brother's relationships, the police found them to be very complex. That perfect boy had many conflicts with his classmates from high school and even college, but they all had alibis in the case of his disappearance. My house is located in a rather sparse area next to the edge of the forest. The local police also deployed all the most modern equipment and methods to search for him, but there were no results. He seemed to have vanished without leaving a trace. For 4 years, I became the sole focus of my family's attention. I grew tall and handsome, just like my brother. Now, I am 22 years old, the same age my brother was when he went missing. The family is proud of me, but I know that every time my mother looks at me, she remembers him and secretly cries. On his 28th birthday, my brother returned. His appearance hadn't changed much, except for a more mature face. He was still wearing the same clothes he had on the day he went missing. Needless to say, my parents were overjoyed, especially my mother. She couldn't tell whether everything was a dream or reality. My brother was immediately taken to the hospital for a thorough health checkup. The police were also present to take his statement about everything that had happened, but he was uncooperative and very withdrawn. But he seemed to be doing quite well, and his body showed no signs of injury. My brother has returned after 4 years of being missing, and I'm about to get into big trouble. On the first night he returned home, I couldn't even eat anything at dinner. Before, he used to hate me. Now that he's back with such a sullen personality, he's even more unpredictable. That night, when I went to bed, my brother just sat on the bed staring, making me afraid to even breathe loudly. I lay down under the blanket, unable to sleep in this tense atmosphere. Suddenly, there was a small noise, and I jolted awake, frozen in place. My brother was holding a small knife, pointed directly at me. "Now it's your turn." I immediately ran away, as fast and as far as I could, without having time to call for my parents. My brother chased closely behind me, with the knife still pointed straight ahead. His face was cold and expressionless, his eyes wide open and not blinking even once. I felt like I was running far away from the Grim Reaper's Sith. I ran into the forest, not knowing how long I had been running, until my 2 feet were deformed and mangled. I stopped in front of a deep abyss, and at that moment, I felt an excruciating pain in my feet spreading throughout my body. Turning back, my brother had gotten very close. The scene felt very familiar. It had happened 4 years ago. It's just that my position and my brother's have swapped. That night, when I saw him panicking and slipping, I felt a sense of joy. I didn't need to do anything to him. Even if he was found, there would be no evidence for me to fear. I quietly left the knife in its place in the kitchen and lived with that secret for 4 years. I thought I had completed the mission. I woke up, looked around for a long time to realize that I was still alive. Time passed for nearly 2 months. I had slept a long sleep with my body suffering multiple injuries. The police found me at the bottom of the ravine in the forest. Miraculously, I had survived. They were still actively investigating the cause and the perpetrator. I told my parents to immediately stop the investigation. Although they were very confused, they followed my insistence. I asked my parents about my brother. They said he had left and would contact us later. The fear, pain, and despair he felt 4 years ago, I have now experienced as well. I wonder how he managed to survive. Will he return and forgive me? I found out that my grandfather, my dad, and the devil were actually the same person. I'm Melvin, and I'm 17. I've lived with my grandparents and Aunt Sam since I was little, and I've never met my parents. I've always felt loved by my grandmother and Aunt Sam, but not by my grandfather. I feel like there's always been a gap between me and my grandfather that just can't be closed. He's never really shown me any words of care or loving gestures. When I was 10, I used to run home from the bus stop all excited. The sound of kids crying left me feeling really confused. When I walked into the living room, I saw my grandmother holding a baby wrapped in a blanket, and she was crying too. "Come here, Melvin. This is your little brother, Henry." I was really curious. As a 10-year-old, I had a lot of questions, like why I suddenly had a younger brother, and whether he was born by our mother, Carrie.
You're not allowed to ask questions that go against any instructions from adults.
My grandfather's voice sounded really annoyed when he heard my questions. Aunt Sam quickly pulled me over to see my brother, but I was in tears because I felt sorry for myself and didn't really feel anything for Henry. I stayed in the room that my grandmother said was my mom's room, and Henry stayed with my grandparents since he was too young. I asked my grandmother about my parents many times, but she just smiled with a red, tearful face. My grandmother always told me to keep the room just as it was, down to the smallest details. The picture showed a very young and beautiful woman, and my grandmother said that that was my mother, Carrie. I don't have any information about my father, and neither do my grandparents. I don't share many traits with my mother, but resemble my grandfather more, and I really don't like that. I've had insomnia since I was a kid, probably around 7 or 8 years old, because of all the different noises. Sometimes it was the laughter of kids, and other times it was the crying and scolding. I could never quite pinpoint where it was coming from. I told my grandmother everything because she always listened to me.
Stop making up stories and asking for things.
My grandfather's voice sounded annoyed when he overheard me telling my grandmother that the room needed better soundproofing. My grandmother didn't have much of a say in the house because she didn't work. The whole family relied on my grandfather's salary for all the expenses. I saw my grandfather get angry with her many times, even throwing away the dinner she had just made because she mentioned my mother. She wanted him to spend some money to hire a detective to find my mother, Carrie. My grandfather didn't seem to care about my mother, so I could kind of understand why he didn't show much love for my siblings and me. Because I was really afraid of my grandfather and didn't want to cause any trouble for my grandmother, I tried to put up with those noises for many years. Sometimes, hearing the laughter of the kids made me laugh too. I also have a younger brother, Henry, but we always had to follow my grandfather's strict rules, so we were all pretty closed off. As I grew up, I always planned to visit my mother and ask her why she didn't bring my brothers and me along, or why she never came to visit us. One day, the family dinner took a serious turn when my grandfather announced that he was at risk of losing his job. At night, I heard the two adults arguing about money and some illness, along with the sound of a child crying. I put a pillow over my ears, but I couldn't block out the annoying noise. It sounds like it's Grandpa. I sat up and walked around the room, trying to find a spot where I could hear the noise as clearly as possible. The woman's scream was really loud, and then the argument stopped. I had a lot of doubt about the man's voice. For almost a week now, the noise I've been hearing every night is a mix of a child crying and a woman's soothing voice. Of course I can't sleep. The child's crying might mean they're uncomfortable or sick. I know this from seeing my grandmother take care of Henry when he was little. She gently held Henry, comforted him, and sang him a lullaby with a worried and tired expression. A noise that sounded like a door opening came from right outside. I quietly went to open the door, and it was my grandfather. He must be thirsty. I figured that since there was a bathroom in my grandparents' bedroom, he wouldn't use the one in the living room. I followed him down to the living room, and instead of turning right to go to the kitchen, my grandfather turned left. I kept a safe distance so he wouldn't notice me and kept following him. My grandfather went into the basement. I waited until he was inside, then I hurriedly followed him. But by the time I got to the basement, my grandfather had disappeared. I walked around looking for him but couldn't find him, and I started wondering if I was dreaming. I decided to sit in a hidden corner and wait, and eventually I fell asleep. The sound like a lock made me jump awake. I was surprised when my grandfather appeared out of nowhere and left the basement. I didn't tell my grandmother, but decided to keep an eye on my grandfather for a few more days. For the next 3 days, my grandfather didn't do anything out of the ordinary and didn't go to the basement again. I was tormented by the sound of a little girl crying and the woman's constant cursing. In her scolding and cursing, she mentioned Mark, my grandfather. I grew more and more curious about my grandfather and was sure he was hiding some kind of secret. On the fourth night, I saw my grandpa pulling back a shelf in the basement, and it opened up to another basement behind it. While I was still in shock, my grandpa led a woman holding a little girl, and they both ran out of the basement in a hurry. The woman's face looked a lot like my mom's. I didn't really react, and I'm not sure what I was feeling at that moment. I just stayed in that corner of the basement until the next morning. The police, along with my grandparents, Aunt Sam, and the woman who looked like my mom, came back. With the police urging him on, my grandpa reopened the door to the other basement. 4 more people came out one by one, all calling the woman Mom and my grandpa Dad. My grandmother immediately collapsed and gasped. I ran over to hug her, and everyone was surprised. The strange woman looked at me, burst into tears, and called my name. The whole truth about my parents, the 2 people I had been longing to see for 17 years, was finally revealed. The noises I heard every night were from my mom and my siblings, who had been living in a dark, cramped basement. My mom had been imprisoned for 24 years by her own father, someone I didn't know whether to call Dad or Grandpa. I had 7 siblings in total. It should have been 8, but one of them died because my mom was abused while she was 7 months pregnant. My grandfather took Henry and me upstairs because the basement was too cramped and told us that my mom had abandoned us. I can't forgive the person who committed this terrible crime, but he did create my 7 siblings. Mother Carrie endured extreme physical and mental pain. Even though she hated the person who took away her future and happiness, she always said that she loved and protected all of us at all costs. I love my mom and my other siblings a lot, for I'm the lucky one. I've decided to move on and live a new, happy life with my grandmother, Mother Carrie, Aunt Sam, and my 6 siblings. But I never stopped wondering why my grandfather did such horrible things to his own daughter. The story is based on a real-life event about the tragic life of a girl named Elizabeth Fritzl. Her real dad is Joseph Fritzl, a messed up, creepy guy. He started abusing his daughter Elizabeth when she was just 11. When Elizabeth was growing up, she tried to run away from her monster of a dad a bunch of times, but it never worked. For 7 years, starting when Elizabeth was 11, Joseph started working on turning the basement into a prison. On August 28, 1984, when Elizabeth was only 18, he drugged her and locked her up in the dark basement. He raped her every day, and after 24 years, Elizabeth had 7 kids with him, going through unimaginable pain and humiliation. In April 2008, Joseph finally let his oldest daughter, Kristen, who was really sick, go to the hospital. From there, the truth came out, and the whole world saw the face of a monster.
I'm Ryan, 17 years old, living with my parents in Arizona. I have a passion for the gym. My father is my inspiration. My dad designed a fairly large room full of exercise equipment at home. Dad has an admirably toned body at the age of 58. My mother is quite young, 13 years younger than my father. Mom doesn't like to exercise but prefers skin caring and follows a strict diet. I'm very proud to have parents with outstanding and youthful appearances. But I have nothing in common with them, except for my mother's blue eyes. I don't care too much about this. After all, I'm quite handsome according to everyone's compliments. In my father's practice room, there's a wooden shelf containing many medals of large and small awards from gymmers. The top position in the middle of the wooden shelf is a picture of my mother when she was young. But in that photo, my mother has brown eyes, In my mother's room, there's also a very strange picture of a woman. I have never met her before. She's very beautiful, short brown hair and blue eyes like me and my mother. I witnessed several times my mother clutching that photo and crying, looking at her in so much pain and torment. I asked my mother about the photo of that woman. She just smiled at me and did not answer. After many times like that, I didn't ask about that woman anymore. My parents rarely show affection to each other. They respect each other's private space. They have a lot of love for me, but in two completely different ways. Outside of studying, I enjoy playing music and exercising in the gym. Everything was very normal until the last month. Every time I step into the gym, it feels cold and gloomy, a feeling I've never had before. At first, I didn't pay too much attention to it, nor did I tell my dad about it. Until recently, a series of scary events that happened caused me unable to ignore it anymore. The first time was when I practiced at 9 p.m. I went into the room and turned on the lights and warmed up thoroughly. I started the workout by jogging, but as soon as I stepped on the treadmill, the light in the room suddenly turned off. Power blackouts in the area where I live are quite rare. Looking into the next room, the electricity was still on. I thought the light bulb was broken. But when I got close to the switch, it was in the off state. I turned my hand on the switch and the light came back on. At that time, I did not have any doubts or feelings of fear. I continued the training session and finished at 11 a.m. The second time was also when I was alone in the gym. It was around 10 p.m. I'm doing shoulder raises using resistance bands. Suddenly, the song I was playing turned off, and a few seconds later, a child's giggling voice froze the blood in my veins. The laughter was so loud and haunting, I shivered and got goosebumps. About 5 seconds later, the laughter disappeared. My music continued playing. I stopped the exercise, went to drink water, wiped my sweat to calm down, wondering whatever just happened was real or I was hallucinating. That day I finished my homework early. I didn't tell my parents about those two strange encounters because they would be so unbelievable. The third time it was not at night, but around 4 p.m. It was the weekend, so I spent time practicing earlier than usual. I improved my exercises with barbells. Lying down to lift weights, I feel like it's much heavier, even though my weight remains the same. After lifting it about 4 times, my mind started to feel dizzy and ringing in my ears. I closed my eyes lightly and then opened them to regain consciousness. When I opened my eyes, I brought the weight down at the same time. From the horizontal bar of the dumbbell, a woman hung, her long hair hanging down, her big eyes wide open, her mouth wide open, filled with blood. In her arms, she held a crying newborn baby. The woman pressed her terrifying face close to mine. Her loud scream and the child's cry hurt my ears. I was startled and screamed loudly, unable to control the strength in my arms. The dumbbell pressed hard on my chest, making it difficult to breathe. At that moment, the woman also disappeared. I braced myself, used all my remaining strength to place the dumbbell on the support bar and sat up, clutching my chest and panting. It took a few minutes to calm down. I was about to get up and go to my room. Accidentally, I looked at my mother's photo on the wooden shelf. Mom looked at me, her unfamiliar brown eyes filled with anger and resentment. I was startled to remember the woman's face just now. She looks a lot like my mother, but it's the mother in the picture. I went into the bathroom and poured cold water down really hard to really wake up. Running to my parents' room, I wanted to tell them about the horrors I had experienced. But just as I approached the door, I heard 2 people arguing.
You are the one who killed my wife and son. You even destroyed your own face just to be here.
I was so shocked. I rooted to the spot, listening to every bitter word my parents said.
It turned out that the woman with blue eyes in the picture in my mother's room was my mother's real face. So what about me? What is my true identity?
My name's Richard, 35 years old. I'm working for a construction company, major in structural engineering. 2 years ago, I was assigned to researching on a dismantle of a building. It's a building in the outskirts of the city, in the eviction area. The building was large and very sturdy, constructed some 15 years earlier. In order to dismantle it safely, I'd need to study the site in order to calculate the amount of explosive used and in which area so the collapse would be at the least risks. My supervisor had greenlit on the permission to stay in the building and facilitate the structural study. The day I moved in, 2 tenants welcomed me in, a mother and son. The mother name's Kate, 66 years old, and her son Jim, 41 years old. They lived here for a long time and seemed to understand the building very well, even providing me with very detailed structural maps. Jim was pretty gentle and polite, while Kate, in stark contrast, was rather rude and seemed to ignore me at every turn. My accommodation was a room on the 3rd floor. I scoured the entire building, and I'd admit, this house architecture was really strange. Advancing to the 2nd floor, the walls were sunken down with a strange cave-in, about 6 feet high, 3 feet wide, and about 1 foot sunken in. Within the sunken part hung a bundle of roses. I came closer to take a better look, man. The wall there was like at least 3 feet. I asked Jim about this disparity and why no one bothered fixing it. He just smiled softly. That's where my dad passed away when the building came down to the final phase. An accident, and he's buried in the cement. I was really shocked at his revelation, while Jim wasn't so thrilled about it. Moving up to the 3rd floor, I asked Jim further about the architecture and the building blueprints. As far as I was told, the architecturer who designed this building is Christopher, a rather famous one in the field. Jim told me that 15 years ago, Christopher had vanished without a trace. All police attempts came up empty-handed, and all of them agreed that Christopher left behind a rather mysterious building that even them couldn't crack it. Jim told me about Christopher's old room in the highest floor and told me that this room was off-limit. I agreed and returned to my room, starting with the instruments and study of the basic layout. However, in the evening when I was taking a shower, I could hear sounds coming from behind the glass. However, upon checking everything, I couldn't find anything unusual at all. At night when I sleep, that sound once again rang out. It felt kinda like someone's calling me or calling for help. Later the following morning, I went downstairs and met Kate in the kitchen. I asked her whether there was anyone else residing in the building and was told that the 3 of us was the only residents here. After breakfast, I began my observation to mark up the foundations for demolition. When I made my way to the highest floor, I remembered Jim's order. But I was curious, so I ventured further into Christopher's old room. There was a lot of architecture books there, and quite a few personal stuffs that weren't coated in dust at all, as if it had been regularly used. I was rummaging through the stuffs until a voice boomed from behind me. "You just forgot what I've told you already." Jim stood in the doorway, looking at me, smiling. Yet I felt so uneasy by that smile. I told him that I just wanted to look for additional information of the building that'd help in my survey. After leaving the room, I felt very strange about Jim. When I was strolling on the 2nd floor hallway, I saw Kate standing facing the wall that her husband died on. She brought over a fresh bundle of roses, hands over the deflated area. She must have missed her husband dearly. After realizing my gaze upon her, she threw back her cold gaze upon me. She demanded I stop all demolition attempts, because she'd rather die in the house rather than seeing it demolished. I could have no way to console her about it. After all, it's what I had to do. That night I went to bed rather late, yet suddenly I heard someone wailing and begging. Walked out of the room. I was surprised to know that it was Kate. She was kneeling and crying on the deflated wall commemorating her husband's demise. She begged him not to come back for her anymore. The pain in her voice made me shudder. I thought there's some crazy secrets that was hidden in this very household. At night, I woke up due to a sudden sense of cold, enough to make me shiver. When I was able to open my eyes, I realized that I was locked up in a very tight space, with slippery walls surrounded. I was in full panic, slammed hard on the walls and screamed aloud, hoping for someone's attention. Suddenly the ceiling opened up, came over with blinding white light shining down upon me. A shadow appeared, quietly looked down upon me, despite my ceaseless pleading for help. That shadow didn't say anything, but just pouring down a thick substance. Only when it came and touched me that I realized it was all cement. The caustic wet cement seemed to have eating through clothes and body. The pain was unbearable, and I could only scream and hope it would go away. Until the moment the cement rose overhead and the substances streamed through all my orifices. It was until that I jolted completely awake, the caustic taste still linger in my mouth. It was all just a bad nightmare, and thanks to that, I was unable to go back to sleep. Later that morning, I sneaked back to Christopher's room to search for additional information relating to this household. Before I was able to come in, I realized the room was occupied. It was Jim. He's rather, versed around this part of the house. Jim went to the corner of the room and pushed on some hidden furniture there, revealing a large hole within. I carefully marked the location in my memory to avoid Jim's detection. A few days later, I tried to act as normal as I could in front of the two tenants. Every location for demolition charges and building foundations had been made and mailed back to the company's headquarters for processing. Kate was becoming more and more cold and rude, while Jim was acting rather relaxed. On my last day there, I snuck up on the secret chamber in Christopher's workroom when everyone had fallen asleep. It was a rather small, dampened place with 2 observation holes carved out into my bedroom and bathroom. So, Jim had always kept me under his watch from the start. When I was deep in my thought, I saw Jim sneaking to my bedroom, a sharp knife on his hand. He slowly made his way to my bed, swinging it high. He swiftly lifted up my sheet for a strike, but then stopped when couldn't see me there. Those actions were in stark contrast with the gentle smile that man often wore on his face. It was when I realized that Jimmy Guy was no joke. He's truly a serial killer, hidden in plain sight. Jim angrily stormed to the bathroom. After a deep breath, he quickly ran out of the room. I knew where he's heading and placed myself accordingly. Right across Christopher's room, I could hear raging footsteps getting closer and closer. So I did the only logical thing I could, closed the door shut and locked it from behind. The door suddenly bulged up by strong impacts. Okay, that guy was really into me now. I thought, braced myself in the short corner behind the door. Open up! This is the police. Hearing that, I knew that I would be safe and opened up the door to the authority. So as a precaution, I called the police before venturing here to this door. Now safe, I could see the police arresting Mrs. Kate and Jim. Initial diagnosis concluded that he's suffering a serious case of schizophrenia. When the building was manually dismantled, workers there discovered a small hidden section right behind my room. In there was a dying old man. That was Christopher. After recovery, he told that he was the grandfather of Jim. That twisted man had buried his own father alive in concrete and illegally imprisoned his grandfather for 15 years. I didn't dare to imagine what would become of me if I hadn't alerted the police before going to the room.
My boyfriend won't let me eat anything except what he makes. Me and Lewis have been together for over a year. We've got a sweet relationship,
going through all the ups and downs like any other couple. Louis is super picky. Every single thing I eat has to be made by him, but honestly, I'm cool with it. One time he got home late from work, and instead of making him deal with cooking, I went ahead and made dinner myself. He came back super mad, grabbed the pan off the stove, and tossed the food I was cooking straight in the trash. Louis yelled, "I'm telling you one last time, don't cook anything else." I was shocked. Yeah, my cooking's not as good as his, but he didn't have to act so crazy about it. I didn't talk to Louis for 3 days after that, but he finally said sorry with a big home-cooked dinner, and we made up. We never go out to eat. We always just cook at home. Louis won't buy food from the grocery store because he thinks it's from who knows where. He even brings his own food in a bag to company or family parties. A bunch of times, my friends told me to dump Louis because they thought he was kind of messed up. Everything about Louis was great, except for his weird eating habits. He was super caring and loyal, so I decided to just roll with it. But the more I tried, the weirder Louis got. One weekend, he was out from the crack of dawn till late afternoon. He came home with a big bag, and his clothes were all stained with this dark red stuff that I was pretty sure was blood. Louis said he couldn't trust the meat guy, so he went to the farm and asked the owner to butcher the animals right in front of him. "You're crazy, Louis," I shouted at my boyfriend. He didn't say anything, just finished up the meat and stashed it in the freezer. That night, the sight of Louis's bloody clothes and his blank face had me thinking a lot. Looking at my boyfriend next to me, I was like, did he just hit up the meat farm? But then I decided to just ignore where Louis's meat was coming from. Right before Christmas, Louis said his parents wanted us over for dinner, but he didn't want to go. But I really wanted to go. I'd never met his parents, and I wanted to ask them about Louis's weird eating habits. After a whole day of bugging him, Louis finally said yes. On Christmas Day, we were all set to roll out. I got all dressed up and put together a nice gift basket while Louis was still in the kitchen whipping up dessert. As we pulled up in front of his house, Louis kept telling me to only eat the stuff he made. I agreed to make it quick, and we both went into the house to a warm welcome from his parents. They were super classy, friendly, and loaded. During the meal, his parents and I were happily chatting while Louis was quiet. I felt really rude for constantly turning down the food from his parents. When he stepped out to take a call, I had a little booze in me and totally forgot all about Louis's rules. I tried the veggie salad while his parents were all happy and excited about it. It was awesome. I totally got where my boyfriend's cooking skills came from. When I asked why he had those weird eating habits, his mom just sighed. "We used to have a maid, but she just vanished." That same day, we found out the food she made was poisonous. I guess that's why she took off. Ever since then, Louis has been kind of freaked out. He learned to cook and makes all his own food now. I saw how helpless his parents were and just ended up understanding and loving my boyfriend even more. The problem was the booze was getting to me, so I secretly snuck some food from Louis's parents' place, and I definitely couldn't let him find out. The next day, when Louis went to work, I couldn't wait anymore. I grabbed the food his parents gave me last night, heated it up, and dug in. Just as I was almost done eating, I saw something in the food that made me choke. It was a human finger, like the pinky finger to be exact. I screamed and tossed the plate of food right on the ground. I crawled into the bathroom and kept throwing up for an hour until all that was coming up was just this bitter yellow stuff from my stomach. When Louis got back, he rushed over, looking surprised, mad, and helpless. I asked to be taken to the hospital to get all that food out of my system, and Louis jumped right on it. As soon as I got out of the hospital, I asked Lewis to take me to the farm where he got the meat, and he totally went along with it, no questions asked. After seeing the whole slaughtering process, I trusted my boyfriend. But after that Christmas, I just couldn't eat meat anymore. Lewis looked at me all helpless and said, "Maybe my parents' meat grinder is messed up again."